If you thought the Chris Watts case was really bad, this next case rivals it. It's really an entire family tragedy. And it happened with a family in a town I used to live in. So let's get into it. The Anthony Todt case.
Hey, Agent Owens. Today's disturbing case involves a father who unalives his entire family, which includes his kids, wife, and family dog.
Sounds like a very disturbing case. Let's dive in and see what we can find to try and understand all this.
Yes, it's a really sad case. So we are Studio 7-0, and we'll introduce ourselves.
It's your girl, Siobhan.
And I'm Ed, so if you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. What you just saw before then was our animated characters, Crime Force AI Investigation Unit. They help us with diving into many AI tools and dig up information on different cases. But before we get into the start of it, we would like to say,
This is for education and entertainment purposes only. Please always do your own research and always be kind to everyone.
everywhere. And before we really start, I just want to say, as I mentioned, this is a very sad case. So this family, really quickly, we live in Connecticut. I don't live there now, but I used to live in Colchester, Connecticut for 18 years.
Wow.
And I have seen this family in town. Actually, I've seen him around quite a bit because his kids were young. My kids are a little bit older. But, I would see them around with the different sporting events and different age groups. So I never spoke to this gentleman, Anthony, but I definitely seen him around quite a bit when I did live there.
Cute family.
So even though it says they're, the tragedy happened in Florida, they actually lived in Colchester. And we'll get into a little bit further. Yeah, beautiful family. Very, very, very sad. So Crime Force is going to give us the background of the story, and then there'll be some questions afterwards that they'll have to answer for us. Okay, let's get started.
Here's the background on the Anthony Todt case. The Anthony Todt case revolves around a tragic multiple homicide that occurred in December 2019 in Celebration, Florida, a
2019?
planned community
Yeah.
near Disney World. Anthony
Celebration's
Tony
nice.
Todt, a 44-year-old physical therapist, was charged with the murders of his wife, Megan Todt, age 42, and their 3 children, Alec, age 13, Tyler, age 11, and Zoe, age 4.
So cute.
The family also included their pet dog, Breezy. Anthony Todt lived in Celebration, Florida, a planned community developed by the Walt Disney Company near Orlando. Before moving to Florida, he and his family lived in Colchester, Connecticut, where he ran a physical therapy business. Prior to the murders, Anthony Todt's life was marked by significant stressors. He was facing serious financial difficulties due to healthcare fraud allegations related to his physical therapy clinic.
Wow.
Investigators
that is.
discovered
I
that
know
he
where
had
that
been
is.
charging patients for services not rendered and had accrued over $100,000 in debt.
Oof.
This financial strain
lot.
likely contributed to the family's isolation
Celebrations.
from their
Florida's
community.
not cheap.
The discovery of the murders. The situation escalated when disturbing text messages began appearing on family members' phones from Anthony Todt. These messages raised alarms and led authorities to return for a more thorough investigation. Authorities became involved when they conducted welfare checks on the Todt family after receiving concerning messages from Anthony. On January 13, 2020, police entered the home and found the decomposed bodies of Megan and the children in various beds throughout the house.
Disturbing.
Stick.
Each victim had been stabbed and smothered. Disturbing details revealed that they were found with crucifixes clutched in their hands. The family dog was also discovered dead nearby. Anthony Todt himself was found outside his home exhibiting strange behavior and claimed to have attempted self-murder by consuming a large quantity of Benadryl. It was later revealed that he had drugged his children with Benadryl before their deaths. Motive and confession. The motive behind these horrific acts remains unclear as Anthony's statements about the events changed multiple times during investigations. Initially, he maintained his innocence but later confessed to unaliving his family under various circumstances, sometimes claiming it was an act of mercy or an attempt to save them from an impending apocalypse. During his trial, Anthony testified that Megan had unalived their children before attempting to self-murder herself. He claimed he found her with a self-murder note and felt compelled to stay with her rather than seek help. His defense suggested that he was influenced by Megan's mental health struggles stemming from Lyme disease and depression.
I have Lyme
Trial
disease.
and sentencing.
I'll talk about later.
In 2022, after a lengthy trial filled with graphic details about the murders, Anthony Todt was convicted on multiple counts of first-degree murder.
Oh my goodness.
He received a life sentence without parole for unaliving his wife and children. An additional year was added for animal cruelty regarding Breezy's death. The case has drawn significant media attention due to its shocking nature and has raised discussions about mental health issues within families facing extreme stressors.
Let me just pause there. A couple things.
That
First
is
off,
disturbing.
Lyme disease doesn't cause that, number one. It causes neurological damage. Actually, I had Lyme disease that triggered shingles, which triggered Bell's palsy, and that's why this little eye is a little weird. But yeah, that's BS. It's just really, I didn't realize this, Shrock, but watching these videos and pictures of him, like I said, I wasn't friends with him. I didn't interact with him, but I would see him because my kids were always involved in sports, and even though his kids were younger, like I've seen him around like quite a bit, you know, man. When I say quite a bit, I don't know, like once every couple weeks.
Colchester's not a big
it's not
town.
It's big on the map, but it's a lot of people when you deal with sports and you're out on the weekends, you tend to see relatively the same people. I've seen him quite a bit. I mean, I recognize him, and it's just weird. It's just weird, and I feel bad because I won't mention any names, but we had a gentleman who was a coach for our kids, and you know, he was also close with that family and the kids, and it's got to be very tough being a coach and knowing the kids, and this happened. I guess they wound up moving to Celebration. Celebration is a very beautiful little community that is created by Disney. I've been there. I took a walk around it. I was actually looking at houses back in the early 2000s. It was like the cheapest house was like $250,000 back then. It's very expensive. So I don't know if they moved to try to get away with everything, but you know, get away from everything. And you know, I know where his practice was or is, or I don't know if it's still there.
Have you ever gone to his practice?
No. I don't think any of my kids did either. I think they went to the other one that was closer to the other side of town, but it's just really weird. It's very, as you could tell, guys, when I say about the Chris Watts thing, this is very disturbing case. And I think one of the things is, and this is a great question, what are the other possible motives for these murders? That is true, because that, you know, the video brought up a little bit of what possibly could be the motive, but not really the end of day thing. Really, that's kind of weird. Let's see what Crime Force has dug up, Shrock, and then I'll get some questions from you. Oops, sorry guys, my bad. Let's go to this one. Sorry, here we go.
While the exact motive behind Anthony Todt's actions may never be fully understood, several theories have emerged based on psychological patterns seen in similar family annihilation cases. Here are some possible motives. Number 1. Financial ruin and desperation. Todt was drowning in debt, facing eviction, and under federal investigation for healthcare fraud. Some theorists suggest he may have believed there was no way out and decided to unalive his family rather than have them face homelessness or shame. In many family annihilation cases, financial collapse is a major factor. Number 2. Fear of losing control. As a father and husband, Todt may have seen himself as the provider and protector. The impending collapse of his career and finances could have made him feel powerless. He may have convinced himself that death was a better alternative than letting his family experience failure.
Wow.
Number 3.
Sad.
Self-murder pact or delusions. Some reports suggested that Todt had doomsday beliefs, possibly tied to an end-of-the-world scenario. He may have believed that by unaliving his family, he was saving them from something worse. There is speculation that he planned to die alongside them, but failed in his self-murder attempt.
I don't know about that.
Number 4. Psychological breakdown. The stress of financial ruin and fraud allegations may have caused severe mental distress. He could have experienced psychosis, paranoia, or extreme depression, leading to a distorted sense of reality. However, he never claimed insanity as a defense during his trial.
There you go.
Number 5. Familicide as an act of possession. Some perpetrators of family annihilation unalive their loved ones because they see them as extensions of themselves. If Todt feared losing control over his family, he may have believed if I can't have them, no one can. This is common in cases where family members are viewed as property rather than individuals. And lastly, number 6.
Sad.
Desire to escape consequences. With mounting legal trouble, Todt may have wanted to erase his life and start over. He may have thought unaliving his family would prevent them from suffering because of his crimes. This could explain why he stayed in the house with the bodies, perhaps in denial or hoping for a way out. While we can analyze potential motives, Todt's true reasoning remains unclear. His shifting stories and lack of clear remorse leave many unanswered questions.
And that's interesting too, the lack of remorse.
Yes, the lack of remorse.
Do you have any comments so far? Or you want to keep going?
I am galvanized to hear this story because as long as I've met you, you really have not really conveyed this story to me, which is interesting. Because, you talk about a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that is heartbreaking that look at this beautiful family. That's why we always say when we look at someone, we look out at the outside, but we really, really do not know what happens in anyone's family but our own. That's just plain and simple. A lot of people do not talk about a lot of, financials and anything else that's going on in their family. When you see them, they smiling, they basically saying, hey, how you doing? But you really just don't know what's going on.
You don't know.
And he probably could have got help. So even if he, like you say, you interact with somebody who's been like,
I mean, when they were with the family in Colchester, people thought probably, oh, that's great, physical therapy, you see the kids, they're doing the good sports, you got to have a little bit of money.
Like they have it all.
They got it all. Back in the old days, like my grandparents, they would say, don't worry about what your neighbor, because everybody lived really close together after World War II. Everybody had those small houses or lived in a 3-4 family. Everybody saw each other and said, look how good they have it. Nowadays, it's social media, right? And which is the biggest, oh my goodness. Social media, a lot of the people that I saw, not all, but a good portion that I've seen, they look so happy. And then when I go see them in real life, I'm like, oh my goodness, it's just... And I just know from my own situation too, in certain situations, I've seen people like just smile, click, and then it's really like,
Exactly.
So you never know. And the next question here, guys, is a good one because, what were the warning signs? Because if you have friends or you're in a situation where you see some of these things, maybe it could help other people, help this for preventing. Never say never. So let's see what Crime Force has to say here. Was there any warning signs from Anthony?
Yes, there were several warning signs leading up to the murders that indicated trouble with Todt, though many of them were not publicly recognized until after the case unfolded.
That's sad.
These included financial issues, legal troubles, and strange behavioral changes. Financial and legal troubles. Massive debt. He was drowning in debt, owing hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans and back rent for his business and home.
Ooh,
he was also under federal investigation for Medicaid and insurance fraud, accused of billing for services never performed at his physical therapy clinics and CT.
That's not good.
Eviction notice. His family was facing eviction from their home in Celebration, Florida shortly before the murders. Business and personal issues. Patients at his Connecticut clinic started noticing financial problems, with reports of him missing payments to staff and landlords. In the weeks before the murders, his businesses were failing, and he had stopped showing up to work. Isolation and sudden disappearance. By late December 2019, Todt and his entire family stopped communicating with friends and relatives. Relatives became concerned when they hadn't heard from Megan or the kids for weeks. His sister eventually called the police, urging them to perform a wellness check, which led to the discovery of the bodies.
Wow.
Mental and behavioral red flags. Some reports suggested Todt had been talking about doomsday beliefs and seemed to be in a dark mental place. He later claimed Megan was involved in the unalivings, despite initially confessing. This shifting story suggested possible delusions or an attempt to cover up the crime. After his arrest, he showed little emotion when discussing the deaths, which some saw as a sign of detachment or psychopathy. Could the signs have been recognized earlier? While the financial and legal troubles were known, few suspected that Todt would resort to murdering his family. Since the family had no prior history of domestic violence, there were no official reports of abuse or threats before the unalivings. However, isolation, financial ruin, and erratic behavior are common precursors in family annihilation cases. Looking back, these signs paint a picture of a man losing control, personally, professionally, and financially. While it's impossible to know exactly what triggered his actions, it's clear that he was spiraling downward long before the murders occurred.
Thank you, Crime Force. They're great questions and answers. We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So one of the things I was thinking about, and obviously I still have friends in Colchester. I still got people I know there. Obviously, I'm curious to see the whole thing about. I have to research a little bit more too. If they moved to Celebration, like I'm wondering if they had two homes, or if they really just picked up everything in Connecticut and went to Celebration, or they had both. But either way, let's just say they sold in Connecticut and went down to Celebration. Now, Connecticut's very expensive. The houses here. But Celebration is kind of like on a different level too, because, I would say it may be equivalent. I have to take a look. That's what I should have done ahead of time. My bad before recording, is to see what the typical house is down there. I'm going to assume it's got to be $400,000 to $800,000. So he was really, he probably portrayed to him and his family, everything's under control. Don't worry about this. That's misunderstanding, trying to, but when you can't lie anymore, you can't cover yourself anymore. Everything kind of just, the veil drops. Right. And then he just freaked out.
But they didn't mention what his wife does. Like she definitely seen the warning signs in some shape or form. I know she probably never knew that was going to happen, right? But what did his wife do?
She must have been, well, it depends on what he told her. I mean, he could have, I'm assuming she knew about the investigation. Maybe you could say, okay, it's just some document. You could just say, oh, they're just investigating. It's, they're thinking it's just bad documentation. You could say whatever. I don't know how much she knew. And then, one of his stories was that she was the one that talked about the end of days, and she was really the one that was, going back and forth. But let's face it. I mean, if I was a betting man, and again, I didn't know him, I would just physically see him around. But I would put my money on she had nothing to do with it at all. And he tried to keep up appearances. Maybe thought, okay, if I could just resolve this, pull this, figure out this, maybe even if I do bankruptcy, or maybe if I pull this money, if I could just parlay it and get down to Florida, open up something or do something different, I can get out of this mess. And I just think all the doors closed. He just got deeper and deeper and deeper. And he was the one on his own volition, did all the stuff. I don't buy the end of day stuff at all.
And then he mentioned depression. What was that about?
Yeah. But, a lot of people have that. I mean, he could have had depression, but it could have stemmed out of everything that's going on, but, get help. It's a shame that, people who are in that family structure don't realize that families, especially like that, when you have like a healthy relationship, and I don't know their business, maybe it wasn't so healthy, but it seemed like there was a pretty good, connection between mother and father there, the two of them, that you're more resilient. If he came forward and said, hey, listen, I screwed up, I'm in really bad shape, as a couple, as a family, you figure out from there, okay, you may not be eating great, or you may not be in the best house. You may have to get an apartment, but you can figure out a plan to get out of it. Okay, we're going to cooperate. We'll pay whatever fines. We'll have to go into bankruptcy. We'll restart, we'll redo. you don't unalive your whole family, you know?
Exactly. But we have to also remember that some people, they are used to having, I guess, a certain type of lifestyle, we're going to call it, right?
Exactly.
So when you reach that threshold of not having that lifestyle anymore, then you start in this panic mode, like, oh my goodness, if I'm not having this lifestyle, I'm going to just,
Or maybe he figures if I can't provide that lifestyle, I'm going to lose my whole family anyhow. And if I'm going to lose them, I'm going to lose them on my own terms.
right.
It's very, very sad. And I haven't talked to anybody in Colchester about this topic.
Yeah.
So, any event, thank you guys so much for watching. Crime Force team for helping us.
Now, this was interesting. That house that they were murdered in that, I mean, I want to say unalive in that house. Like, that house is still up for, like, who lives in that house now?
Oh, I don't know. It's probably was sold a while, foreclosed on, sold. I'm going to, after this, I'm just curious, but if I was a betting man, like I said, if the cheapest house that I think in 2000 was 250,000, I'm sure it's really ridiculous right now.
Yeah.
But if you liked our show, come and subscribe. We do have memberships, so don't,
join us.
We'd rather just have you guys come back and keep watching. We have some scarier topics of true crime. We got some old historical ones. We got newer stuff like this. We got all kinds of things. Yeah. And so if you like true crime, we're all over the place because it's all about true crime. So
yes,
come back. Yeah, come back and see us. Any last words, Shrock?
Yes. Thank you for watching Studio 70.
Studio 70.